Is it an epic or epic failure? The Big Review. Movies, games, and TV in focus.
Pulse 95.
You guys should know by now, we're going to be talking about The Witcher. We were getting into the mood of The Witcher with Toss a Coin to a Witcher.
Yes.
The iconic song from the first season, but we're going to be talking about the second season of the long-awaited high fantasy show.
2 years.
2 years. And I know how a couple of days ago you're like, yeah, last year. I'm like, no, Michaela, it was 2 years ago. It wasn't last year. And
I certainly don't have a good concept of time these days.
I don't blame you. I mean, 2020 was having kind of chaotic.
It's like a 2-in-1.
It was very much a 2-in-1. Hopefully, brighter skies, greener grass in the upcoming year, that is 2022. But let's focus on this season of The Witcher, where we kind of pick up the story of Geralt and Ciri now that they have been united. And it basically follows the story after the big, great battle of Sodden and what is happening here, especially as Geralt is trying to understand Ciri, her powers, and also train her for an unknown threat, especially since she is a princess and she is also a person with great and mysterious power, and a lot of people are probably out looking for her to capture her. So we're gonna give you a heads up, just a bit of very minor spoilers, nothing too big, do not worry. And it's gonna be starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kaer Morhen, I love that arc a lot.
Great setup, honestly.
I loved it so much, especially with Cohen and Lambert kind of being, Ciri's dads. I love that concept very much. And how there's a found family, found father, found mother, found sister, found uncles. That trope is chef's kiss, and I want to see more of it. Even though they were bullies, but they loved her deep inside.
Especially if you watch the animated film, the prequel with the story of Vesemir, and coming finally to the ruins of Kaer Morhen. It's just a really great sort of like pacing if you get into it. The introduction of more Witchers is always something that's very heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
We get to see how they're like when they're resting in the winter, taking it easy. But always you got Geralt of Rivia, the sort of the star of the show. And what I really like is that this season there was a lot of focus on Geralt now becoming a father figure to Ciri, training her, advising her, just sort of letting her know that the world is cruel and you gotta fight those fears and learn to survive. And I really like that whole sort of like subplot throughout the series.
And what I love as well is the fact that it didn't put in that very annoying another trope where if somebody is supposed to be a father or a mother figure in somebody's life, they kind of take them through this awkward phase, where here there was absolutely no awkward phase, just basically emphasizing that Geralt and Ciri are literally connected by destiny, that when they do get together, it's like they're literally father and daughter, and it just came way too smoothly, and I love it. I love that aspect, and also love the fact that we see Ciri's character, and also enjoyed the fact that she was not shown as, somebody she is scared and terrified.
In the first season, she was like this.
Yes, because she was very confused. And again, through the first season, we didn't really get much of her character except those brief moments before the fall of Sintra, when you see that she's quite tomboyish, or she's very active, and she's very fierce, but you see that fierceness just amplified and uplifted throughout the season. You see that she's actually very, very stubborn and problematic, but it's in a very different way, as in she's still a child, but she also has big ambitions, and she's going through a whole existential crisis, and I loved every bit of it, to be honest.
She's more fierce. She's trying to fight against the fear. She wants to be stronger, and there's like all these touching moments where she really looks up to Geralt. She's like, I want to be like you, because you see a man like him who shows no emotion in any moment of danger, and it really inspires her. And I love the whole subplot between them, and their parallel with Vesemir being also the father figure to all the other Witchers.
Yeah.
And while this whole subplot unfolds, we also get to see the politics that is the political intrigue that's taking place throughout the continent as Redania, the Northern Kingdoms, start to realize the growing threat of Nilfgaard.
Yes.
But that's where some issues arise from this, because if you've not brushed up with some of the lore or from the past season, some details or expositions kind of fly over your head, and it's
Some?
It's like which king and which kingdom and which group of special interest lobbyists are at play here. But it seems that besides dealing with Nilfgaard, they also are targeting Ciri herself.
Yes.
Why they want her and how do they know about her special past or powers is still something that even in the series is only brushed very, very small. Like it's just like, tell me more. Why are these people going out of their way?
Exactly. And I feel like that is one of the main negative criticisms I think we both share about the season, because even though people called season 1 confusing, it was absolutely not. It was
comparatively,
it was just, you needed to understand that there were several timelines happening, and when you figure that out, you're good to go.
And they resolved it this time around. It's just a straightforward, everything is moving along in the same timeline.
Exactly, but now you're trying to understand the politics, the various names, the characters, the name drops as well here and there, the introduction of a new character every 10 minutes, and you're trying to keep up with every single person. It's a little bit too much, but what's not too much is this review of The Witcher, the second season. We're going to continue with it right after the short break, so stay tuned and stay locked to Pulse 95.
Pulse 95.
We are reviewing the second season of The Witcher with very minor spoilers, so don't worry, we're not going to ruin the entire thing. There are still major subplots that we're not going to be dealing with. Mostly going to be talking or brushing over the various relationships and the various plots that are happening throughout the season. Now, we all loved the relationship between Geralt and Ciri. We loved the expansion of the continent, learning more about it, but at the same time, they left us begging for more information because we were so lost. Basically, since episode 3-ish, I was like, are they not going to explain something to me? Why do they keep introducing more characters when I barely caught up with the ones you just introduced to us? And to add, yes, I know that some of these characters did appear all the way in season 1, but at the same time, we're trying to understand the politics, and especially the ones between the mages, within Nilfgaard, and also now with the elves, and also what's happening within the world of the Witchers, and just between Ciri and Geralt and Yennefer and Jaskier. And then you're like, I'm just trying to catch up, just slow down a little bit as we jump from one person to another.
Yeah.
And at some point, it becomes a little bit too much.
Like I said, the main subplot with Geralt and Ciri, I absolutely love it. It shines in every moment in the series.
But don't you think
other moving parts, the subplots with Nilfgaard and Northern Kingdoms, the mage Institute,
Aretusa,
that also kind of feels iffy, because like, what is their motivation now? Are they going to perhaps work with Nilfgaard, or are they going to support the Northern Kingdoms? And then you have all these little subplots in play where they're trying to capture Ciri, some secret groups here and there, assassins and spies and whatnot, but who are they affiliated to? Then there is the introduction of the monolith and how they impact the conjuring of spheres. One thing I really liked is that there was an introduction of new monsters that were even to the Witchers unbeknownst, and I love this new threat that the Witchers have to face now. And there's also the whole subplot of, is there any way we can continue a new generation of Witchers?
Yes, and also to add to it, it's the whole also who is an ally and who is an enemy, and are they an ally to Geralt and Ciri, or are they an ally kind of like halfway there? Do they actually trust each other, etc.? And sometimes that gets a little bit too much. And I wanted to go back to the whole thing with Geralt and Ciri, where even just trying to understand Ciri's power, I know they're confused, but we're as confused, especially since they're talking from a sense of knowledge about the various things, the various aspects and elements of magic and whatnot within the world of The Witcher. So we can presume that even though they're confused, they do have a basic understanding of what's happening. So they're just trying to piece those together. Meanwhile, us as the audience, we don't have that information. So we're like, what are you even talking about? When they were talking about the conjunction and the spheres and the monoliths, I'm like, I don't even remember the monolith from season 1. And they had to basically remind us of it. So they needed to take into consideration that 1, there was a 2-year gap between the first season and the second season. And 2, this is a high fantasy setting. It has a lot of world building, and we're not the ones who created it. We need to catch up and follow on with you guys. So if they're not explaining that, it becomes an issue. But another, like, a positive thing for me is I love how, just like how Geralt found his fatherhood, basically. Same thing with Testea. She is, she's more of a motherly figure, and I love that in her, where she's basically more in touch with her soft side. She already was, but she was a little bit more rigid in the first season. So I like her here, and I hope it doesn't mean that, this is the last time we see her, because she's incredibly cool and whatnot. But yeah, I'm interested, but I'm incredibly lost, and that is one of the reasons why I'm going to be docking some points in this season. And also, I remembered my problem from season 1, and it is the contact lenses. They're terrible. I'm sorry, they're terrible. They're too much. They're a little bit too much. I mean, I love Henry Cavill.
I think they serve their purpose substantially.
Not Geralt. He just looked like he was glaring at everybody the entire time, and there was no movement, and it was just a little bit off-putting. The others, it was like a hit or miss, kind of, especially for the example with Yennefer, who had purple eyes, so it's a little bit more subdued. But the contacts, terrible contact. What are you doing, Netflix?
I'm still actually, one thing I will praise is that this time around they've changed up the Nilfgaardian armor. It doesn't look cheap, in my opinion. But in terms of the series, there's a lot of brief moment of excellence, but then it's bogged down by very weak subplots and unstable antagonists. I don't know who are the real threats for in the story.
Maybe that is part of maybe that's an integral part of it, just to show how big of a threat her existence
like biggest
is.
example is Fringilla and Cahir. I don't know how are they going to they're going to be a threat. Now they're focused with the elfin kingdoms and trying to build up Nilfgaard. I don't know. It's just I don't know what their purpose is in the upcoming series.
I like the fact that there are so many threats, because it just emphasizes that, like I was saying, that Ciri has it coming for her for every side and angle. Literally everybody's coming for her. Literally everybody wants something from her. So I like that, and I love the fact that they themselves are like, how do we get her, etc. The many threats is not the problem. It's sometimes, how do they, like you said, how do they know that's where Ciri is? I understand there's magic in the continent, but it does not mean that anything is being explained. And also, just like you said, sometimes even the foes themselves who are friends who is foe. Again, I understand it and I enjoy it to an extent, but sometimes there's confusion, which is why I would give the season a 7 out of 10, to be honest.
I'm somewhere between 7 and 8, but I think I'll lean back to the 7 because
of the contact lenses.
I think overall, when it comes to just Geralt and Ciri, it's an absolute blast. I think they are the best part of the show. Having more monster slaying, more magic involved is also a plus. The world building is getting a little bit more intricate, but in doing so, we can get a bit lost with some of the exposition and the moving parts of the story.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, it is a build-up for something hopefully greater. And with the prequel series coming in, we might be able to understand a little bit more of the mystery behind the world of The Witcher. So yes, a 7 out of 10, but I think it's a great sort of addition to the first season if you want to keep watching, and I definitely think you should watch. It's one of the better stuff that Netflix puts out, and it was definitely worth the 2 years worth of waiting. And at the same time, you always know, I feel like every Witcher season has to have an absolute banger, and Jaskier has brought it back again.
He definitely did. Here is Butcher Burn from the man himself, Jaskier.
If you liked this episode of Afternoon Karak, drop a like and subscribe.
Pulse 95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.